Discover your inner goddess and live up to your highest value and most abundant potential. Welcome to Grateful Goddesses, a podcast that empowers you to unleash your inner goddess and take the leap of faith to live your best life. Your guide, Karen Pulver, joins her fellow goddesses in soulful conversations about gratitude, personal growth, authentic living, and a bevy of topics affecting women today. Let's start the show with your host, Karen Pulver.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses. We're so glad that you intuitively knew to turn us on and join us today. Now, intuition, what do we mean by that? I myself feel like I have followed my gut for most of my life. In fact, my dad at my wedding, in his wedding speech, gave me the great advice. And he said, "To thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not be false to any man." And this advice has stuck with me. I am trying to be true to myself at all times. And when I feel like I'm not, when I feel kind of off the alignment, I just don't feel right. And that has happened to me a lot. In fact, when I had my cancer diagnosis, now it'll be 10 years ago, I knew something was wrong in my body. I went to 3 different doctors. They all told me that I was fine, that it's just my imagination, that I'm, totally fine. But I knew that I wanted to figure out what was wrong. I didn't really have symptoms. I just didn't feel quite right. And sure enough, when I had the tumor removed, which was on my back, it was biopsied as cancer. And I wish that I would have listened to that feeling sooner. I did catch it in the early stages, but I went about 2 months without, thinking I was crazy, thinking like my intuition was wrong. Another example that I wanted to share is when I moved 30 years ago now to Chicago with my husband, my feeling was always that I had to move back. Like, when am I moving back to Toronto? This doesn't quite feel right. And I have to say, though, this is why I want to question our guest. I didn't move back. I stayed. So I'm not sure if that's following my intuition, if I, in fact, should move back. Even to this day, I have that feeling. So those are lots of things that we're going to talk about today. Our guest today is Kim Chestney. Kim Chestney is the author of Radical Intuition, a revolutionary guide to using your inner power, a globally recognized innovation leader, and the founder of Intuition Lab. Her work has been featured or supported by leading-edge organizations, including SXSW Interactive, Carnegie Mellon University, Comcast, and Hewlett-Packard. She lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Visit her online at www.kimchestney.com. Named as one of the leaders in Pittsburgh's creative revolution, Kim Chestney has been an innovative force in cultural transformation for nearly 2 decades. Working in both the technology and arts sectors, Kim has led initiatives with some of the leading-edge organizations, universities, and tech companies in the world, creating new spaces for intuitive expression, including an art gallery, a creative business incubator, and hundreds of cross-sector events. She founded and produced the internationally acclaimed Create Festival for 10 years, which brought together thousands of game-changing artists and creative entrepreneurs from all around the U.S. each year. In 2018, Kim was elected to the Americans for the Arts Advisory Board for her outstanding achievements in the creative economy. In 2017, Kim started up Intuition Lab to teach a new and innovative approach to intuition. Her new book, Radical Intuition, a revolutionary guide to using your inner power, is the culmination of 20 years of research, exploration, and advocacy at the intersection of spirituality and cultural evolution. As the source of all great innovation, ingenuity, and creative ideas, Kim recognizes intuition as the driving force of our future as we cross the threshold into the imagination age. Her groundbreaking work has been featured or supported by SXSW Interactive, Carnegie Mellon University, the Pittsburgh Technology Council, New World Library, Simon & Schuster, New Orleans Entrepreneur Week, International Economic Development Council, Chapman University, and the European Union, West Virginia University, Penn State University, the Elephant Journal, Savannah East, OM Times, SIGGRAPH, the Santa Fe International New Media Festival, and Americans for the Arts. Kim has evolved to become one of the nation's top conveners, champions, ambassadors for creatives. Welcome, Kim, to Grateful Goddesses. So nice to see you today.
So nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Karen.
I loved your book, Radical Intuition, A Revolutionary Guide to Using Your Inner Power. I'm rereading it. I'm marking off different pages because what I love about it is not only do you really get into explaining intuition and all the different facets of our mind, our body, our spirit, all the different ways that we can actually feel it, you have actionable activities, steps that we can do to move forward. In fact, I did one today, Kim, this morning. I took pieces of paper. I did the little billet. You talk about writing down different things on the paper, and I picked one up and I envisioned a stop sign. That was the first thing I felt. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I envisioned an arrow moving forward, like stop and then go. And I opened it up and it actually, I had written down GG path, like Grateful Goddess path. So maybe I need to stop and regroup and then move forward. I'm not sure, but we're here to talk with you about all the different ways we can interpret intuition. Let's start though. You talk in your book about, instead of to thine own self be true, you say to your own higher self be true. And can you share with us what you mean by that?
Yeah, I love that you wrapped that in and that you started with that quote, because I'm really playing off of that quote. And for me, it was really just this solidifying that we wanted to be true to ourselves, but the best part of ourself, our higher self, that true north within us. And really, that quote just really summarizes the idea that when we're true to ourselves, when we live our truth and we're our authentic being, then we take that out into the world and we really embrace this idea of authentic living. And that's when we find our peace and our power and can do all these extraordinary things in our life.
And now for you personally, I know you had mentioned that you have always had this feeling, or we all have intuition rather. And for you, you've kind of tapped into it or listened to it. So it's interesting because we've interviewed on Grateful Goddesses several other people who are quite in tune with their intuition, and many of them say that they've either had a brain injury, an accident, something very traumatic happened to them in their life, and that has turned on the switch for them. Mm-hmm. Is that something necessarily that we all need to happen in order to turn on the switch for us, or what are your thoughts?
This is such a good question. And really, the reality with intuition is, yes, we all have it. It's just a natural part of our design. We're born with it. But, there's, for various reasons, we haven't developed it as much as we could have. And there's a lot of different ways where it can be activated. For some people, you're just naturally born open to it. Some people just naturally have an affinity for it. Other people can develop it with time and attention and diligence over the years. And even in cases like you mentioned, people, if you have an accident or a near-death experience, there can be you can experience these energetic shifts or even biological shifts that open up your intuition. So there's a lot of different ways that we can activate our intuition. But at the end of the day, we do have conscious control and ability to work with that and open up with our time and attention. I mean, that's what we do when we get smarter and develop our analytical, intellectual minds. We apply ourselves to it. And the same way with the intuition, if we apply ourselves to our intuition, that too can get stronger.
And as a school teacher and a mom, I see children's imaginations fly, and especially in dramatic play and with imaginary friends. Both my son and my daughter had imaginary friends. In fact, my son used to have this guy named Uncle Buck. I mean, where does that name come from? But Uncle Buck was in our home and he would sit down and leave a space for him to eat. And we embraced it at first. We were like, okay, Uncle Buck is welcome in our home. And then I had contacted a psychic, intuitive individual here in Chicago. And she had said to me, and of course, everyone has different definitions of what they think. And she summarized that actually that was a spirit in our home that we needed to release. And she had suggested that my son say to Uncle Buck, go to the light.
Mhm.
And so here I was telling my 4 or 5-year-old son to walk around and tell Uncle Buck to go to the light. And he said, Mommy, he doesn't want to go to the light. And then it made it like, oh my gosh, my house is haunted. So how do we distinguish between, with children who have a very keen sense of imagination, but there's that, is this for real? Is this spirit? Especially people who are very in tune with the spiritual world and talking with angels, they might say that that's what it is.
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up about children because they are so naturally open. I think we come into this world with an openness and a connectedness to the higher vibrations and the more subtle vibrations of being that sort of wears off over time and is sort of also conditioned out of us by, normal life and how we're supposed to experience the world. So it's very common for young children to talk to people you can't see, to know things that should be impossible to know because they're still tied in so deeply with their intuition. So I think that's wonderful. I love hearing stories about this. I've had my own experiences in my own family with situations like that. And I think at the end of the day, the reality is there's all kinds of life out there. We know that when we die, if, once you really are in touch with your intuition and your inner being, that this isn't the end, right? We know that like it's not just over. And so there's a lot of different dimensions of life. This is the physical dimension. We're living in this world of, stuff we can touch and feel, but there's so many finer levels of life around us. And there can be ghost life. There can be, these are all terms that have just sort of been, we embrace it because we've heard it through all the years, but there can be different ways of talking about this now. Like we don't have to use the words ghosts and angels and things like that. Really, it's just life beyond this dimension, multi-dimensional life, and children can perceive that. So, you have to, I would say, just use your own intuition when you're thinking about Uncle Buck or when you're feeling Uncle Buck. And if Uncle Buck is something that makes your kid feel weird or uncomfortable or is causing any kind of dissonance, then I might look at it. But if Uncle Buck could be a guardian angel. Uncle Buck could be a friend, one of your guardian angels. So there's a lot of different complexities around that. And really that's when our own intuition comes in. We got to put it to ourselves and how it makes us feel inside.
Well, I feel like all of the social judgments, the expectations really do restrict. And I feel badly because my husband and I were like, there's no Uncle Buck. He's not here. And I wish we didn't do that because, we said it's a spirit or it's not here and now he's gone. And who knows what would have happened if we, I'll have to ask my son if Uncle Buck is living with him now. My son's 26. You never know. He could have returned.
Right.
You never know. I'd like to bring on our featured goddesses now, Camille and Michelle, to join us. Hi. Camille, you mentioned your daughter had one too. Who was
She did. So her special friend or imaginary friend was Peter Pan, and he was amazing. Like I didn't ever want him to leave. I was sad when he did because he was like, anytime she did anything wrong, Peter Pan did it. Or anytime there was mischief, Peter Pan did it. I mean, because she's an only child too. And so I would hear her sometimes like come up with these really elaborate things that her and Peter Pan would do together. And being an artist kid and a film kid, I just loved it. We just would go in the magical world together. And we'd watch every Peter Pan movie. So I've seen every version from Peter Pan being a woman to a man and all the things in between. And it's just, I think it's great. I'm sad that you were told to get rid of him because he would be flying above our car as we were driving different places. Like he was always there as like an emotional pet, but a spiritual. I can't think of the right term, but how people have their pets that they can carry with them, emotional emotional pet, whatever. I can't think of therapy dog. Peter Pan was her therapy
pet
friend. Yeah. And I asked her about him, like as she's older, and she stopped talking about him. And she's like, I knew he wasn't really there, but he helped make it not so lonely sometimes. And he made it more fun. So, I don't know when she knew he wasn't a real person or not, or how that worked.
But you didn't tell her to stop. You didn't say, yeah. So that was.
Well, yeah. But we went to acting school, and I remember the teacher making a point of saying that school will try the best to kill the creativity inside of children, in the sense that they want them to be able to assimilate and be good students. And being good students doesn't necessarily mean being the most creative and open to, I guess, your higher self and so on. So I was very like aware of that and wanted to make sure that she was able to hold on to that as long as possible. I don't know how that might add up later on in life, so we'll see. But I do love hearing that maybe it's her, it was like an extra angel taking care of her and looking out for her.
Well, that's the thing that I want to touch on is, how do we distinguish between intuition and fear, anxiety, getting that gut feeling, but then thinking, well, I'm not sure. Should I do this? Like the logical mind and the other side. How do we distinguish?
And it's so true. Really, when we're starting to work with our intuition, one of the most important things we have to do is differentiate that voice, that intuitive voice, from all the other voices in our head, all the other feelings that we have. And it can be really tricky. And I think that's one of the reasons why intuition is so misunderstood, because it can express itself in so many ways. It can be a gut feeling, a knowing, or even a psychic experience, or experience like we were just talking about. There's different ways of perceiving reality. So it really comes down to getting to know how your intuition feels, how you experience it. And that's why practicing with our intuition is so important. Those little exercises that you did at the beginning with the billet, getting to know what real intuition feels like is crucial to the process. Because in the beginning, it's, we always hear situations of someone will like be all freaked out about something, like, oh my gosh, I just have this bad feeling about something. And you don't really know if it's your intuition or if it's something that's, just like sort of chatter or some kind of irrational fear. And, in the book, I have this nice little checklist that kind of goes through, the basic qualities of intuition. And it really comes down to just a few simple things, which is your intuition always comes from a place of peace and power. So if your feathers are all ruffled, if you're all freaked out, that's more likely your intuition or your ego or your fears talking, or your mind, right? And not your intuition. Even if your intuition's telling you something, that you have to do that's uncomfortable, you're still going to have that place of peace and power that it's coming from. There will be a solidity to it behind all those other things. So there's a different feeling involved when it's intuition, because intuition's really, it's like above your mind and above your emotions. So it's just kind of like your higher heart and your higher mind. So it's your wisdom, and it's really the way that we're moved through our heart, not so much those feelings and fears. So intuition takes us above all that. So if we're in that calm place of peace, right, that silent inner voice, then we're more likely to be using our intuition than if there's anything that's related to our ego or our emotions or our thoughts or our worries and anxieties.
Well, you relate that to artificial intelligence, and how artificial intelligence is never wrong. It's a machine, it's a machine, it's a computer that just spews out the answer. It has no emotion, no feeling involved. And that's how intuition is, if we can learn how to tap into it. So let's talk some more about that. Michelle, you have some questions for Kim.
Hi, Kim. I do. I'm so happy to be here. So I have a mentor in my life and she's been on the show actually, Wendy Cohen, who has said, the brain may know or look the other way, but the body never lies. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I've really been learning in the last maybe even 10 years how to really tap into my intuition, even more so in the last couple of years. And I'm going to give a strong example. My ex-partner had been cheating on me, mm-hmm. and it was a bit of a pattern. But at one point, maybe a decade ago, I got really, really sick. I got scarlet fever. Karen may remember, I was in Chicago at the time. I threw my back out for a couple months, and I had a pain in my groin that nobody could figure out, which miraculously, funny enough, just went away. Mm-hmm. So, and then sure enough, a couple months later, I found out that he was unfaithful. And I realize now that my brain couldn't handle it. It was a very long relationship, and, had kids together, etc. But my body knew. Mm-hmm. And how do you explain that? Like, I've noticed that within me at other times too. Now I've gotten to be, I think I'm pretty good. I'm always trying to learn more. But how do you explain that?
Yeah, and that is such a common thing that happens with our bodies are sort of the first place to process intuition sometimes, especially if there's a barrier that we don't want to think about it or we don't want to feel it. It'll go straight to our body, and I've had experiences like that too. So I totally know what you're talking about, and this is part of why in Radical Intuition I came up with this sort of new model of intuition. I really wanted to understand it in the full spectrum, right? Not just as these little ways that it pops up every once in a while that we don't understand. I wanted to understand the pathways that it comes through. And I figured out that it really just comes down to the same cognitive functions that Jung is talking about, the basic elements of human being, body, mind, heart, and spirit. So these are the pathways that our intuition comes to us from. It guides us with our minds, like we have our inner wisdom. It moves us with our hearts, and we feel things with our bodies, right? And so if each of us is sort of has different pathways that are naturally open or naturally closed. And specifically, if it's something that we don't want to know or don't want to be aware of, it's going to come through another pathway. So the body's there with all those red flags calling out, pay attention, something's up, right? And it'll keep, and especially if you really relate these to the chakras, you really can look and see. You're talking about your groin. Well, that's the area of, where you're connected with your partner. That sort of chakra, that sacral chakra is a real love connection, a passion connection with your partners. So the fact that you're having pain in that area is really, you can actually see how it comes together in terms of a lesson. And then that it went away when you moved through that, right?
Wow.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
Right, it works out. And so be in touch with that and understanding how our body's talking to us and paying attention even to those energy centers and which ones might be off can help us to kind of open up space and open up our minds and our hearts to situations and then work through them.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. I want to go back and read about the different chakras now.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah,
just if even the most simple understanding of you can just get the basic energies that are contained, and when one's blocked, if it's not flowing through intuitively, that shows up and manifests as some kind of imbalance.
Wow,
pretty cool.
Okay, so cool. I need to ask this question then. When I brought up at the beginning, when I moved to Chicago, I thought I was only going to be here a few years. And I always thought I was going to move back with my husband and when he finished his school, but we stayed. And for a long time after, I had this gut feeling, this is not the place I'm supposed to be living in. I'm supposed to go back. And Michelle knows, I've talked to her many times about it, feeling very sad and emotional about it. Like my heart would ache over it, but I can't leave here. I love it now. I've accepted it and it's built into this, beautiful life here. But I would say for 10 years into living here, I was always wanting to go back and I couldn't leave my husband unless I left my husband. And I wasn't going to do that. I also, on another level, which I think people can possibly relate to, is I would have nightmares about plane crashes, and I would often, before flying, get this feeling like, don't go, don't, in the cab to the airport, no, don't go, like to the point of sweating, where I then get on the plane and breathe and say, okay, I'm going to die today, but it's just what it is. And then I'd be fine. So how do we know with those, examples, and I'm sure people have other ones, like what's the best path to take when we can't, like when we have to go somewhere or we have to stay somewhere or we have to be with someone in a certain meeting or something like that, a situation?
Yeah, and those are two really good questions. And I want to unpack them one by one because they have different answers. And, first of all, I want to say regarding the place and location, I love Toronto too. I used to live there. So I understand why you'd want to go back. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
But what happens, I think, a lot of times in life, and I'm sure you're not the only one who's experienced this, is that, we do have a purpose and a mission to fulfill in different places, even though it may not be our forever home in terms of living. Like Chicago may not be where you're meant to spend forever, but there's something you need to do there. That's why you're still there. There's a purpose, there's an impact. And that's why we're drawn to different places. But maybe there's some karma there. Maybe there's an opportunity there. There's something that you're there for a reason. So really trusting in that process, that when the time is right, the shift will happen, the door will open, there'll be a sign that it's time to make that move or carry on. And just being in that place of acceptance that I'm doing work here that I'm meant to be doing right now. That's really all we can do. Because yeah, a part of us always knows, you know, we have that inner knowing that this might be a place of dissonance, might not feel like the perfect place, because there's work to do here that might be hard, that might be emotional, that might help us break through some blocks that are uncomfortable. And we know that, like, you know, Toronto or wherever the place that we're called to is a place of ease and a place of comfort. So we're going to naturally want to return to that. And maybe ultimately that's the calling, but the calling isn't always answered exactly when you have it. Sometimes you have to hold it for a while and trust the wait.
Oh, I see. And it's interesting you say this, because I just had an astrological reading yesterday, and karmic, she said to me, because I brought it up, and she said, if you were to have stayed in Toronto or in that other place of, you know, your birth, which is Toronto, you wouldn't have accomplished the things that your purpose, your soul needs to do. And you need to do that by moving. It wouldn't have mattered where, but you went to Chicago and you're fulfilling that part of your soul's purpose. She didn't say I'm moving back there, and I don't think I'm moving back there, but that was. Now, what about airplanes or stuff like that?
Yeah, so that's a classic example. People have that experience a lot, right? We have that moment, like we have that bad feeling, oh, I shouldn't do this. And this is really important because a lot of times, you know, we have that bad feeling and then nothing happens. So that's a good indication that that was our emotions or feelings or fears and not our intuition, right? So intuition, again, comes from that place of peace and power. So if you're not meant to get on a plane, your intuition is most likely going to somehow redirect you to something that, like, something's going to come up, you won't be able to get on the plane, you'll just decide, you'll just have a feeling like you don't want to take that trip. It'll come from a place, a calmer place, not this place of panic and freak out.
Sweating.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So if you're freaking out and panicking about something, you can be sure that your emotions are involved with that. And emotions are kryptonite for intuition.
Yeah.
They can't exist together, right? Because intuition is up here. Remember, it's higher. And if you have all these emotions in here, you can't get to the intuition. So there's a block. So usually when you have those experiences and you're freaking out about them, it's usually just some kind of fear or worry. And then you get yourself all caught up in it because you had it and you're not sure. And then it just creates this kind of like cycle of, you don't know what's going on. So, but that being said, if you're moved to not get on a plane, if there is just like a force inside you that's saying, don't get on that plane from a calm place of stillness and power, and you're just like, I just know I'm not supposed to get on that. It would be like a knowing feeling. That's the ultimate intuition, is when your heart and your mind are united. You have a knowing feeling, not just like a raw emotion, right? So there'll be this sense of, I'm just not doing this and I'm totally calm about it and I accept this. That's how an intuition will feel.
Oh, I get it now. Michelle, I can see you want to.
My mind has so many questions.
I know.
But you write in your book about how a lack of self-care can interfere with your intuition. So what are some ways, and that's probably what happened to me in my earlier, with what I mentioned earlier. So what are some things that you can do to practice better self-care so that, we can really learn to trust our intuition more?
Right. Yeah, it's so true. And it's not like just to your own higher self be true, but to your own higher self, let it come first. You have to put that part of yourself first, and then your life will fall into place. So just creating, and the most simple thing I tell people to do to start their intuition awakening or to enhance it, and really to start developing this relationship with your higher self, is to simply create more white space on your calendar. Give space for you. And do what you like to do alone, whether it's go for a walk or take a bath or take a run or a bike ride or anything that you love doing, enjoying, do yoga, right? Anything, just to spend some time with your higher self in that stillness, in that space. And then really, opening up to what comes to you in that space. How many times have you had like a great idea in the shower or when you're zoning out driving to work in the morning, right? It's because it's that calm, open space that opens up your intuition, right? So that's the first step, is slowing down. Turn off your social media, take a break from that, limit your social media time to like a certain time of day. And instead of going to social media when you have a few quiet moments, just take some moments and be still. Have a cup of coffee or tea, and just be and just enjoy the stillness. And that really creates this openness for this life of insightfulness that I keep talking about, is living every moment with insight, having those little ideas and inspirations right there when you need them. And that they come through that gap between our busy thoughts.
That makes a lot of sense. I know in the past couple of years, I've really tried to practice more and more self-care. And now my intuition hits me like a ton of bricks. Like I feel it to the point where I know I have to let something go or not do this. Like, it's so strong.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense for me. But I'm going to ask one other question to further that. Do you always, so there are times where I know my intuition's right, but I don't necessarily know why. Mm-hmm. So for example, we talked about Toronto earlier. I grew up partly in Toronto, a good portion of my life. My heart is also there, Karen. I know, it's so funny. Sorry, Camilla, you're the only one who hasn't lived there. But so since I've been divorced 2 years now, my dear family and friends have tried to convince me to go back to Toronto, and my heart was always there, just like Karen. But my intuition strongly tells me not to. But I actually don't fully understand why, but I feel that hard push not to go back. But I honestly can't really name it, but I just know it's not for me right now.
You just hit the nail on the head with intuition, because that's really what intuition is. It's knowing, but not knowing why. So often we don't know the reasons with intuition, and we have to embrace that and understand that and say that's okay. Because remember, we're not working from this place of the analytical mind and the quote unquote thinking mind. We're coming from this place of simple knowing. And this kind of knowing doesn't need reasons. You just know it. Even though you don't know why you know it, you know it. And when you get into this space of trusting that, and that's part of trusting that self, trusting it and honoring that and following it. And you do, as you know, the more you do it, the more, you get these validations like, yeah, that really is my intuition, that it's come through for me. And so it becomes easier to get into that uncomfortable place of trust, because intuition really at the end of the day comes down to trust in that knowing within us, without having all this, without having information. And that's the thing. Our intuition has all the information. Our intuition is that direct access, just that sort of cloud of data that is pervasive throughout the universe. Even though our little tiny consciousness can't wrap our minds around it all, our intuition knows. So trusting in that part of us that knows everything, yes, let's do that, because it knows more than we do. And even if we don't know why, the beauty comes in trusting what does.
So one more thing on that note, you made me think, and that's why I have the smile on my face. Several people have asked me how I can trust in a relationship again, given that, sadly I was with somebody who cheated for many, many years with different people. And here's my answer, and it brings such a beautiful smile to my face, which is, I don't have to worry about trusting anybody else, because I trust myself now.
Amen.
Yeah, because I've come to that place where my intuition is, as I mentioned, so strong. So I wanted to share that, because it just feels like such a beautiful thing for me.
It is. And thank you so much, because that's what it's all about. It's trusting yourself, right? It's not just trusting in some outside force. Your higher self is within you. It's your connection from the inside. So when you can live and trust with yourself, trust those callings, trust those knowings, trust those inner feelings, then you can't go wrong when you follow and trust that inner
beautiful
feeling.
Okay, but
here she comes.
Well, I'm just thinking about our viewers and listeners who are, thinking, what about this? What about that? So I wanted to bring Camille in, because she has a quote from Dr. Maya Angelou she'd like to share and have a question about it.
So thank you. So Dr. Maya Angelou is known for this quote of, when someone shows you your red flags, believe them. And I think for women, it's such an issue, because we are taught from a very young age to always be prepared for that man that's going to come around the corner, whether it's the kidnapper or rapist or date rape. Like, we're just always kind of in that fight or flight mode when we're out in public, or even when I think of Breonna Taylor, in your home. You just don't really know where your safe spaces are. And sometimes that intuition comes more so in just like muscle muscle memory where you're just always like, maybe the steps coming behind me are coming faster or so on. So I love that you mentioned that if it's an uncomfortable feeling, then you know it's not your intuition. But at what point do you know that red flag is a red flag and not just your fears from past experiences or even past fears that you were told about from, whether it's about the killer that's coming behind you in every horror movie
But
that's walking past her. Yeah.
also to piggyback off of that, just with meeting people in general, like in terms of friendships, I often I've learned from my parents, give people the benefit of the doubt because you don't know what's happening to them on that particular day. So when I meet someone and my first impression is bad because they're acting funny or strange, I always give someone another chance. And many times I give them 3, 4, 5, 6 chances. And then I'm like, okay, that's it. They showed me themselves at the first. But sometimes it works out the other way. So it's kind of distinguishing between all that.
Yeah, and I think that that's true. And Oprah talks a lot about intuition as a survival instinct, as part of our really built-in protection. And there's a really wonderful story in the book Radical Intuition about my friend Jessica, who lived in DC. I don't know if you read this. I just want to share this for listeners because I think it's really relevant to what Camille said. And she had a situation like that where she was walking down the street after work at midnight. She had just closed down the bar, and she was a yoga teacher and also a barista. She's walking down through, I think she's DuPont Circle area of DC, which is, it's usually a pretty well populated area, walking to her house. And she just had this feeling that something was off. So the short answer to this question is going to be trust your first impressions, whether it's a feeling, thought, that first thing that comes in is to remember to trust that. She just had this feeling. There was a police car she saw up ahead, and she just had this thought that she should go up and ask him for a ride home. It just came to her out of nowhere, right? So that's what an intuition feels like. Comes out of nowhere, doesn't really seem to make any sense. And then she started talking herself out. I was like, why would I do that? He would think I was crazy. Like, I'm not going to do that. And, she noticed around this time that there was a man walking behind her. And she, so she started having this inner dialogue and really talking herself out of doing that thing to go up and talk to the police officer. And she just went on her way, and pretty soon the footsteps got faster and closer. And he ended up attacking her, and she got pretty seriously hurt. Luckily, there was a neighbor that came out, so she didn't lose her life, but it was a very serious situation. And she said that, while she was having that inner dialogue, she told herself that the universe would protect her. She gave herself all these reasons. Oh, I'll be fine. I'm a kickboxer. I'm tough. I can defend myself. The universe will protect me. I'm all these different things to help talk her out of that very first insight, which was to go get help. So the thing that we look back on this that's most powerful about this situation is, had she gone and got help, she would have never gotten that validation that there was a reason for her to get help. She probably would have gone the rest of her life thinking that she was crazy asking that cop for a ride home. Unless that guy happened to attack someone else and it was in the news, but she wouldn't have gotten that validation. She wouldn't have known. She would have had to go out on that trust, doing something, though she didn't know why. My intuition just told me to do this, and something doesn't feel right, so I'm going to do it. And that could have saved her this horrible experience. And then she asked herself, she's like, well, where was the universe? Why wasn't the universe protecting me? Well, it was with your intuition, with that first insight. That was the universe protecting you. So when you have those little moments, they are sacred moments. Those little insights, those little callings, those little red flags. Even if you meet a person for the first time and you have a red flag, honor that. Yes, maybe you can't kick them to the curb the first time you meet them because they're in your social circle and there's all that, but you can still distance yourself from them, or you can still respect that you have that intuition without discarding it or talking yourself out of it. So that I really feel that the short answer to that question comes in those magical first impressions, those red flags, those drop-ins that come to us in these moments, and holding on to them instead of rationalizing them away.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because it makes me think of this. My aunt did this video one day just in her car, just talking, and she kind of went through a lot of the same things Michelle went through with her previous spouse. And it was about that sometimes the universe will give you, I can't remember what the first one was like. It'll give you a hammer. It might hit you with the hammer. Oh, okay.
A whisper, a shout, a roar.
Right.
Well, no, it was like
Oh.
it was different tools.
Right.
Like there's a hammer, a scalpel, or something like, and the whole idea was that if you don't listen the first time, and maybe that's where it started. Yeah, maybe it did start with the whisper and this, and if you don't listen to that, then it'll start hitting you with maybe just a scalpel, and then maybe it's a chainsaw that it has to take to get rid of it, or something to that effect. And it was just like very visual of a thing where you have to really protect yourself. Otherwise, the universe is just going to keep coming at you until you learn that lesson, and it'll just get harder and harder until maybe it's a Mack truck that hits you with it almost.
Yes.
So,
But
Absolutely.
does this apply to what I had asked, like just with first impressions with meeting people, like, or even when I give a bad first impression, or, you know, we all know like, oh, I wasn't feeling well that night and I met someone at this party and, oh, I was not on my A game and I just gave such a bad impression, but that's not who I really am. I wish they'd give me a second chance.
Well,
But then,
I think that's more the mind than intuition, right? I don't really feel like that's so much. Yeah, we all have days where there's dissonance, and that's just normal. I think that if someone is using their intuition, they will see through you having a bad day. You're right, and they'll see that deeper connection. So,
oh,
I do
okay, that
think
makes sense for
maybe
even how I feel about people. Like that's why that's right. Because that when I meet some people, I'm like, no way, no,
right,
stay away. And some people are like, wait, that didn't seem right. I want to get
right,
to know them better.
right.
Oh,
Right. Yeah. It'll kind of leapfrog that kind of stuff because it can see past our bad days, and because we all have
right.
them.
That's so cool. I never thought of that. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I
I
have to
wanted to
say,
bring up about serendipity.
Mm.
It happens to all of us. It's kind of that whisper that you talk about. I personally keep seeing, my husband and I keep seeing on the clock 7:14. In whether it's in the morning or the night, he'll call me on his way home from work and he's like, oh, look at the clock. Or in the morning we wake up, oh, look at the clock. And I'm so curious, you talk about in your book that when that happens, you need to stop and think about what were you thinking about at that moment? What were you doing at that moment? So I started to practice that and do that with him. And we both were thinking about his mother who had passed one time. And we just kind of thought, I wonder if that means something. And then in conversation, we remembered she used to say to us when we were first married, take care of each other. Like, you know, always take care of each other, always help each other. And I'm wondering, maybe that's what it is. I mean, there's no clear answer, but I love how you say that. Can you elaborate on all of those serendipitous moments people have, like seeing, I don't know, do you girls see certain times, or numbers? What do you see,
Yeah.
Camille?
so,
76, I think, right?
yeah, I always see 7/6, which is the year I was born, but it's, even yesterday, like I think I had like 3,706 followers on one thing, and the other one was 367 or something. I don't know. It was like all these like different numbers that either are multiples of 6 or 7s. It's just really weird. And so when you even said 714, like, oh, see, that's 2 7s. It makes 14. But you remember, I don't know if you guys subscribed to Young Miss back in the day, YM magazine. I used to get
Yeah.
that magazine. And in the back, they had numerology. And so I was always like obsessed with numerology. And my name is 3 7s. Well, my maiden name was 3 7s. And my best friend's name is 3 6s, and he's a drag queen and his stage name is 6. And so it's just so funny how 7s and 6, and like my husband's birthday is the same date as my kind of stepbrother, half brother, I don't know, we just call each other whatever. And it's one of my good friends of the same, so it's like funny, like those angel numbers, I guess they call it, like different numbers. So whenever I see those different numbers, I try to call that person that I think of with those numbers, or reach out to them just to see if how they're feeling, because it gives me an excuse to call people other than, you know, the random text messages for no reason, or random TikToks, or as you were sharing, you know. So I
Michelle, do
love
you have
that.
numbers too?
Yeah. I have the classic, 111 or 1111. Just, in the past like year and a half, maybe I've been really noticing it, and it's wild. The other thing I have though is I intuitively, I think, know what time it is. I'm not a great sleeper, pretty tired right now. And I get up in the night, and actually I did last night. And I actually last night didn't look, but I'm sure I knew what time it was. And I do that. And this morning, when I finally did get up, same thing. Like I just have this ability, or even throughout the day or whatever. I know.
Yeah. So, and that's your superpower, right? So think about that. If you can know
What are we
that.
getting?
Well, I just want to say my birthday is 111, so that's crazy that you said that.
Wow.
So, I mean, think, Michelle, if you can know that before you wake up, why can't you know anything, right? Think about that. You can know something before you look at it. So that's just a tiny little example. I love that so much. And I had a thing where I could wake up at any time in the middle. For like 10 years, I never used an alarm clock because I could wake up whenever I wanted. If I said I want to wake up at 2:35 in the morning, I'd wake up at 2:35 in the morning. And you start to have these little moments like this. And a lot of times it's wrapped around sleep, because sleep is a place where our rational overthinking mind is turned off. So we're in this place of openness. We're in this intuitive place so that it's easy for us to connect to these things. So think about just what she said. She knew what a time it was before she looked at the clock. That is a classic example of this ability to know something you shouldn't be able to know. You didn't look at the clock. You didn't know that, but a part of you was connected to the world and gave you that information. So those are really fun stories and should just be little validations. And that's really why it doesn't have to be some great use in life. That's what all these little serendipitous moments are for us. It's not that it's anything life-changing, but it's those high fives or pats on the back from life saying, there's something important going on here. Life is bigger than what we realize. You're supported. You're connected, right? So there's just these little validations that point us to the higher ability and potential that we have, and the wonder of life that we don't forget about. And in my house, we call these God wink numbers. I love everybody's stories, by the way, all of you, such cool stories, because numbers can be so powerful. And I remember, growing up being in math class, I was like, oh, it's so boring math. Now that I understand numerology and the philosophy around these numbers, I would be much more interested in math class because they are so fascinating. And we have to remember with intuition that intuition is about our attention. So just like, Karen was talking about in the beginning, we're drawn to these things for a reason. Or like Camille said, maybe I need to reach out to a friend. So I see her Godwing number. Like my daughter is always 555. So whenever I see 555, I'm like, oh, that's Eva. I'm going to check on Eva, right? So same kind of thing. That's a wonderful practice. And it's really, really is a powerful way of giving us those little validations in life that allow, to remind us that there's something powerful going on.
I still, every July 14th, because it's 7/14, on that day, I'm always like, so attuned to what's happening in that day as well. Because I don't know, 7/14 could mean so many things, but if I just kind of turn that switch of like being more open and aware to it, maybe the message will become more clear to me.
Right. And I do want to say something about that. Because you're right. Some of this can also connect us to people who have transitioned or on another dimension. It can be their way of saying hello. And I love this 714 number for you and your husband, just because what Camille said, 7 and 7 is 14. So that's 2 becoming that one number, right? So it's 7 is half of 14. So you said that she tells you for you guys to be there for each other. It really is a nice symbolism there that the 7 is the 2 of them make the 14. So.
Okay. I'm getting so many like aha moments. And I considered myself, very into knowing about intuition, but I'm learning so much more. And what you talk about, what I mentioned earlier in your book, is actionable steps, actual activities. And I wanted to dive into those. You did talk about creating more white space and actually putting it on your calendar for a daily practice every day. You talk about meditation, and you give meditations in your book, which are beautiful. Billets, that's what these are. You can explain these, but I also wanted to share, you talk about mala beads, which are cool, if you can share that, as well as, showering and, use in terms of showering, like thinking about what are you thinking about, intuitively picking your clothes, your food, journaling. So I would love to know more, and our viewers and listeners, about actual activities to help us bridge to that gap of understanding our intuition.
Absolutely. And there's so many things that we can do. And it all really starts with, I always say, just be alone like it's your job. We have so much pressure to go out and do things and create things. And hey, let's look at this process of developing our inner connection as our job. Let's spend time with ourselves like it's our job, because it will inform our job, it will inform everything else we do. So all of those practices that you mentioned are really wonderful ways to just kind of start flexing those muscles on a daily basis. You know, we want to be still. We want to get comfortable with ourselves. We want to pay more attention to those drop-in insights, those things that come out of nowhere. That's one of the key things, is just really starting to train yourself to be on alert for the thoughts and impressions that come out of nowhere. That is the distinguishing factor of an intuition, right? You don't think it up. You don't figure it out. It just comes to you. That's so simple. It's the easiest form of knowing. So starting to honor those, starting a journal. I call it like a God wink journal. So like writing down those times when you see those numbers and what you were doing and what you were thinking about, to gain clarity into that. Listening, what came to me today when I was in the shower? What ideas, right? So then you start to see patterns emerging. You start to see that there's themes that are coming from your intuition. They're guiding you for this moment and really your next steps and where you're going. So, so getting into that habit, I always encourage people to create what I call sadhana. If you're not familiar with the term, it's really just creating a ritual in the morning to spend time with yourself. Maybe, you know, even if it's just sitting, having your coffee, doing some quiet time, doing some yoga, or just doing a 10-minute qigong exercise, something simple to tune your energy, to tune body, mind, and spirit. And that gets you into this space for the whole day. Even doing some intuition work is great. If you want to use the billets, which are fun little cards where you just write down things on it and then you pull a card and just take it to your intuition. And so those are really fun, especially in the morning, because if you do something like that in the morning, you can kind of say, okay, let's see how this plays out throughout the day. I'm going to pick a card, give me a card for something that's going to happen throughout the day. So we can get a validation. So then you pull a card and then you can see, how did this little billet relate to something that happened throughout the day? So doing stuff like that on a daily basis is a great way to start building validation and confidence in your intuition, knowing how things feel, and really working with it every day. You want it to be part of your life. And this is one of the big misconceptions about intuition, is that we have to sit down with our crystal ball and our tarot cards. We don't. We want that to be flowing all the time. The tarot cards are a great tool, great developmental tool as you're starting to work with your intuition. I have my own, which are insight cards, which are a little different. We can talk about that in a minute. But that kind of stuff is wonderful, but you're going to want to do what works for you in your own unique way, so that you love it and you enjoy it and you want to do it all the time.
I did do your insight cards. So she offers, viewers and listeners, Kim offers on her website, and to her own insight cards. Oh, so she sells them, right? You sell them in a pack,
or you can use the interactive one, yeah.
So tell us about those.
So
maybe we can try it right now. Can you hold it, or can we try it? So we can, sure. If you hold up a card, the three of us can just sort of think about it and then tell you what we.
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's put this in action. That's what Grateful Goddesses, that's what we do. We act on things. Go ahead.
So let's take a moment. The first thing we want to do, we don't want to just dive right into intuition work if we're all stressed out or any kind of like negative stuff. We want to shake all that off. So typically I'd say, you know, we do a little meditation, but we can just take a deep breath and close our eyes and just like relax, right? Just let go of anything that might be creating any tension or stress, and just stretch out your muscles a little bit and relax into the moment. Just take a deep breath and exhale. And then just greet yourself with that gentle smile. You have a smile on your face that naturally lifts up your energy. My cat's saying hello. So let's get into this place and then just ask for a little bit of guidance for this moment, for each of us on our journey right now. Just something that life and the universe would like us to know in this moment. And then you can open your eyes, and I'm going to select a card. All right, so now the way we use insight cards are a little different than tarot cards. We're not going to try to look at the card and understand its meaning. We're going to go to that first impression. Remember, we talked about how important our first impressions are. Using these cards are a metaphor for how we use our intuition in our life. So we want to go to our first impression on the card and let that singular small symbol speak to us as a metaphor for something in our life. And then we'll follow throughout the rest of the card and let the rest of the card support that and really unwind some guidance from the card. So all three of you can use the same card and get three totally different responses from this card. So this is why intuition is so wonderful and so unique, because it's so personal. So that's why I wanted to make sure everybody could see the card. Do you guys have a pen or a piece of paper with you that you could, when you look at the card, I just want you to write down the first thing you see on the card. That's all I want you to do when I hold up the card, okay? Is everybody ready?
Ready.
All right. The first thing you notice on the card.
Okay.
All right, did everybody get it?
Yep.
All right, now think about that as, to put it to your intuition, go within. How is that symbol, how does it connect to something in your life? Does your intuition just immediately sort of connect it to anything that you're looking for, any bit of guidance, any bit of direction? And if you have any ideas, just jot it down. You don't have to have all the information now. Just jot down anything that comes to your head. And I'm going to put the card back up. And then I'm going to ask you to look around that symbol and what's happening around that symbol for some deeper guidance, some deeper wisdom, or some deeper awareness. Notice any colors, anywhere that your intuition takes you. Just don't think about anything outside yourself. Just think about how that card speaks to you for this moment on your path.
Ooh.
Aha, that's what I like to see.
No, you don't understand. Okay, wait till I share it.
Yeah, I don't understand, but I like the sound of it.
Oh my God. No, I'm not kidding. And I think people who are joining us and our regular listeners, they're going to understand when I talk about this symbol, because it's recurring in my life.
And that's how these cards work. There are symbols in there. There are these little aha moments. When what Karen, the sound that Karen just made was the sound of an intuition being received. It's like when the angels get their wings, like that, the sound of that, yes, that epiphany, that connection. That's the sound of intuition making its connection. And it's a wonderful feeling. So just go with that resonance. And do you want to share? You want to share share your process? What happened, Karen?
Sure. The very first thing that I saw was her hand, the one that's lower down, that's like this, and and then I noticed she was dropping something. I just can't really see what it is, a flower maybe? But the very first thing I saw was the hand, and it was kind of like a nonchalant, like, just drop things that don't serve you. Mm-hmm. Be calm. I wrote down the words rest, reset, it's okay where you are, relax. I looked at her. I felt like she was a goddess. That's just on my mind all the time. But I felt like it was not necessarily me, but it could be me. If I just sort of sit in the throne and just kind of enjoy who I am at this moment in my life. I noticed the nature that's important to add to my life. Her cup, I noticed, and I felt like it was full, and it's a lesson that I need to fill my cup. Now, what gave me the aha was the cardinal. I think it's a cardinal.
Yeah, and it kind of sneaks in there because it blends in, right?
Yeah, and the reason why the red cardinal is because we always say, my husband and I, that's his mom who passed, giving us messages. So whenever we see a red cardinal, we always are like, we just say hi, hi Sylvia, like, thanks, and we think about what we're doing. So especially that she's on like the shoulder, like, of the chair, I feel like perhaps that's a sign that she's always with us.
And especially since we were just talking about her.
Yeah, and the cardinal's hidden in the card, and that's why when I looked, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it like blends in almost like a spirit in the background,
Yeah.
It has an ephemeral quality to it.
Can you guys share?
So I have to share, cardinal is our state bird. And so that stuck out kind of immediately to me next to the crown, because I feel a lot of times I've been saying a lot, like heavy as the crown, and you should see me in a crown. And I've been wanting to compete in different things, and just people automatically assume certain things about people that are, in a certain level in their lives. And little do they know all the things that they're being, all the sacrifices. Like I kind of was thinking of Meghan Markle in the way where everyone just assumed she was living this perfect life with the Prince Charming tucked away and life would be better, and only to realize she was in a deeper prison, longing to be that bird that was free. And then also seeing, I, much like Karen and Michelle, I longed to go back to the West Coast because I wasn't, like, moving to North Carolina. It was supposed to be a temporary thing, and West Coast is just for me. And so the mountains made me think of, recently somebody sent me a video from Oregon. I was like, maybe that's where my new home is meant to be, because I just loved all the mountains and the beauty of it all. And my husband and daughter both love the four seasons of it all, and I hate snow. So I was like, that could be a nice middle ground maybe for us, because I keep talking about, like, I have to get out of this state, or at least away from feeling that entrapped of everybody assumes everything's so great, because I have like this token life or trophy wife life in that sense. But I feel so unaccepted that I could relate to the loneliness of the crown and being on that throne.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's so unique. You see how that was totally different than how Karen looked at the same card, right?
Yeah.
That's how your intuition specifically drew you to that point, starting with the cardinal and the crown, and tied it into your life. And that was such a beautiful understanding. That was so wonderful. You were like,
I'm an abstract mom kid. I mean, I'm an abstract art kid. So like my mom does that, made me do that for a living, basically name all of her paintings by what speaks to you. What do you see?
So
So
you know how to do it. It's second nature.
But never have I done it where it like relates to my own life. It's just like, what do I see in the picture and visualize it? But there, I just felt like the bird, by size, it was so much larger than what it would be if it was a real picture, just because it wouldn't be that large compared to her face and head.
That would be a really big cardinal.
That would be a huge cardinal. So that I was just like, it must mean something. And then the key falling, all of that, like I just felt like it was, she longed to be free and amongst everyone else, kind of like the Aladdin movie in that way too, because I love Aladdin. So I just felt that. Yeah. Sorry, Michelle, your turn.
No, I'm having this moment in my own head here, so I'm good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like I was like writing down notes. I was like, the red cardinal and the cat being at the base, like her loyal servant, always there, no matter how she treats. Because think of cats not being loyal and right there with her. And I have a white dog, so that was like, ooh, maybe it's a Maltese.
And also, my cat was meowing at my door when we drew this card too.
My dog was right before you guys came on, so because the UPS guy was delivering me.
So Michelle, yeah. So what did you come up with? How did the cards speak to you?
Look, I could cry all of a sudden.
Aww.
The first thing I noticed was the crown, and I realized I've been really stepping into my own power, and I know it, and I've done things regarding that, and so I loved that, and that includes, I do know, like, I've been thinking a lot, the phrase, everything I need to know is within me. That came to my head. I have it on a necklace, actually. And then I saw the window, and what I like about it is that it's a window. We use the term or the expression, the window into our future. And I actually have no idea what my future is. And I didn't really see what was within, like, through the window, but I love that. I'm excited to know what's coming, even though I like to see what's going to come my way, even though I have no clue. And that's very exciting for me. So the cat, I noticed that was the last thing. Well, sort of. And I'm a new cat owner, a new kitten owner, and I'm crazy about her. She's here somewhere. And she's at my feet, actually.
I hear her now.
She's at my feet. That's so wonderful. I'm just like in the picture.
Yes.
And what it made me think of, she follows me everywhere.
Well, animals are very intuitive. Kim mentions that in her book. They know when you're coming. Dogs know when you're coming, even though,
She does. It's
just
amazing.
like children.
And she follows me. She sleeps, in my room, this and that. And I've been told a lot lately that my energy is really good, and that I've been making all these new friendships and people who seem to want to be around me. And I say that very humbly, really. But that's what that made me think of. But then finally, when Karen mentioned the cardinal and then Camille followed up with that, I never saw the cardinal. And that's what makes me a little emotional, because birds, like you said, are symbolize freedom. And I've been talking and thinking a lot about my freedom and how I feel free, but there's this one part of me, it is a physical thing that's been holding me back a bit, and I've been really working on it. But that's what made me emotional, was that I want it so badly, and I have it in so many ways, and I feel it. But there's this one little small component so it's interesting that I didn't see the cardinal.
Yeah. And that it's important, right? Those little things are important. The things we don't see can be important too. It can point us to a block or something
that was the most powerful,
right?
The most powerful was that I didn't see it. Yeah.
And then when you do see it, after you didn't see it, you're like, whoa, right? Like, I didn't see that. Right. And that, I also love what you said about the phrase that just came into your mind, because that's another thing that happens. Words, thoughts, phrases will just come out of nowhere. And we have to honor those. That's not our mind making things up. This is a sacred conversation that you're having with yourself. When you think about it, this is starting that dialogue, that relationship with yourself, that higher true part of yourself. And these are actual genuine like words that are coming there for you. So jotting them down, remembering them are it's a wonderful way to seal this moment that we've had together, and really to honor it. And for me, it's so exciting. I love seeing this happen over and over again. Like I've done this with like 20 people in a class, and it's amazing how every person has their own unique understanding of the same picture, based on their own intuition in their own life. So thank you, all of you. You guys are all naturals. That was amazing.
No, thank you. So is this some of the exercises you do in your intuition labs?
Yeah, this is the basic, this is the number one. This is where we start. This is our starting point, is working with the cards and first impressions, because it's the most important thing, is understanding that process of first those first impressions that we have to honor. Like if I can't say that enough, I'm just keep saying it over and over again, is honoring those first impressions, but then moving into that state of resonance where what attracts me, what draws me in the card, what am I aligning with, what feels right. And then ultimately getting to that third step of discernment, where we bring in our rational minds to make sense of it and to understand it and to come away from it with some insight or some guidance. So that comes down to that sort of intuitive process that I talk about in the book. That's really natural. It's what you've been doing in your life all along, but now you're just aware of how it works. And when you do these exercises with the cards, it's a metaphor for what happens when you go out and you meet that strange person. Oh, you trust that first impression. Then you move into that resonance. Does it feel right? Does it not feel right? How do I follow through with that? Then you move into that state of discernment, where you finally decide, I'm going to invest in this person as a partner or friend, or I'm not. And then hopefully someday you get some validation that you made the right choice.
I need to get me some intuition cards.
Yes.
Well, that leads into, how can our viewers and listeners contact you, join your classes, order your book?
Yes, thank you. Yes, you can get the book at your favorite bookseller anywhere online, in bookstores. The cards I have on my website, kimchestney.com. And you can also I have a free Wake Up Your Intuition guide there. It's a 12-page little guide talking about some of the stuff that we've talked about today. So you can get that for free. And I sold out of the first deck of these already, but I have a second edition coming out at the end of March. And you can also get these on my website. So if you want to get they're called Insight cards. If you want to get them, I think they're up for pre-order now if you want to check those out. But by the end of March, they should be ready to ship and practice. And then Intuition Lab is my school, and that's global online. We also do in-person retreats, different places around the world. And we have courses for pretty much all levels of intuitive development, just starting out. Really, the masterclass is a 6-week immersion. We have live workshops with me. I can work with you one-on-one. So my passion is teaching people intuition. I love it. I've just really been sort of obsessed with it my entire life. So that's what I'm here to do in any way that I can.
I want to read on page 1. I was looking at the numbers because I was wondering, is it going to be, something, but it's page 113. I don't know if that means anything to anybody out there, but
A
I may
lot.
as well say it.
Yes.
You write this. When you live, act, and choose in accordance to your inner guidance, you are living up to your full potential. You express your real self. You step into your power. When you don't follow your inner guidance, you go against yourself. You sabotage yourself on an unconscious level. You literally block yourself. And then on the next page, 1114. This is why it is so important to live your truth. Living your truth means living true to yourself. It means not repressing your evolutionary impulse for the conditioning of society. It means not holding back who you are to be the person other people think you should be. It means being authentic and owning all the things that make you different. This is the secret to healing your life. And you go on and on. I mean, every page is magical, and I highly recommend your book just to gain an understanding of intuition. As I always say on Grateful Goddesses, as Glinda the Good Witch says to Dorothy, you've always had the power, my dear, all along. You just had to learn it for yourself. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your lessons, your actionable steps. And we are so grateful that you are here on it, Grateful Goddesses. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful meeting all of you. This was a lot of fun.
Up next, favorite things. Opening up to happiness and joy.
Welcome, everyone, to Favorite Things with our guest, Kim Chestney, author of Radical Intuition, a revolutionary guide to using your inner power. So in her book, she talks about this idea that has, I'm sure, happened to many of our viewers and listeners, where you go into a store, you, even for your wedding, for example, you try on that first dress or that first item of clothing, and then, oh no, that's not it. And you spend hours looking only to go back to the first. Well, that is my favorite thing. This is my wedding dress.
Wow.
That, oh my gosh, I don't fit into it anymore. But the thing about the story behind this dress is my husband and I had a very quick engagement. No, I wasn't pregnant, but we had to get engaged and married within, it was a 5-week engagement, 5.5 weeks, because he was moving to Chicago and for his program, long story. But so I had to frantically get a dress. And when I first went to this dress designer, she drew out this design and I said, I love it. And then I was like, I don't know. And I left her and I went shopping and I days and days and tried on all these dresses only to go back to her to have this dress made. And so although it wasn't the first dress I tried on, it was the first picture of everything that I wanted. So I ended up getting the very first dress that ended up being my gown. So that is a typical example of first impression, first gut intuition. So
absolutely, that would have been such a great example for the book. That's exactly the case, right? You just knew. Good for you.
I just knew. I kept dreaming about it. She wrote, she did the whole diagram, but then she gave me a little card with the picture. I had it beside my bed. I kept looking and I kept shopping and thinking, well, there must be something already made like this. There must be something that's a little different. I'm like, no, this is it. Camille, what did you bring today to share?
So, I grew up overseas, and one of the places I grew up was in Turkey. And Turkey, they have these beads, it's like a bracelet it's almost like a fidget spinner before fidget spinners existed. And it was something I would use, just kind of an anxiety type thing, and never really knew the meaning behind it. And recently I started using from, one of our previous guests, Lori Ross, gave us these. Well, this stone is from my daughter, which is a rose quartz, but then I forgot to get the name, but I think it's I forget. But needless to say, I have a lot of anxiety about dentists because my favorite uncle in the world, he was a dentist, and after he passed, going to the dentist was impossible. And this past week, I had to go to the dentist, and I was like, oh, let me get my rocks so I'm ready, because I'm finally at a point where they don't have to give me laughing gas just to get my teeth cleaned. And I forgot them. But because I hold them in my hands so frequently, I could still feel them, I could feel the texture. And that's what I kind of did while I was going through they wanted to do a root canal, and I was too scared to do that because my feeling, whatever, broke that was so close to a nerve, whatever. And so I was just like, oh my God, this is like the worst thing I've ever gone to. And they're like, we might hit your nerve. Raise your hand. I'm like, what? This is not the time to not have my rocks. But needless to say, I could feel every like nook and cranny almost again. And that gave me so much like calmness to it. And just, I think a lot of times people need those kinds of things, or it could be a scent, it could be whatever it is that brings you back to that moment of calmness. And it was just really nice having that ability to be able to do that and go through that experience. And Karen, I guess you and I have to talk afterwards, that maybe Eric might suggest that go get that root canal after all. Like, only 45, this doesn't happen yet. But and maybe that's where the crown comes in, because he did mention something about having a crown put on top of it. So.
Well, those beads remind me of the mala beads that you talk about, Kim, where it's, and I never heard of them before. There's 18, there's a number of them. I guess you guys know.
Yeah, they have 108 beads on the necklaces.
Okay.
And I'm gonna actually get one here real quick because they're, see yours? I wanted to see what yours looks. Oh,
it comes in all different colors. Because this is actually my mom's, because mine was a lot smaller. It didn't have the...
Right.
I have them too. I just don't know where they are.
Yeah. I've seen those before, Kim, and I just thought it was a pretty necklace. I've seen them in lots of stores, and now I know they're to help you meditate.
Actually, it's
the
cool.
masabas.
It's just like Camille. You can have them as a bracelet. They have some mini ones like Camille's that you can use as a bracelet, and it's just, you can say an affirmation with them, like, I am not afraid of the dentist chair, or I am strong, I am brave, you know, whatever.
Because these are like prayer beads, because it's part of the Muslim religion, these originally, but we are not Muslim, so we used it just like for, I guess, the anxiety stuff or meditation and so on. And in Catholic, they have the rosary. I keep wanting to say rosario, but the rosary, and it's got like, it's supposed to be for each year Jesus lived or something, is the amount of beads, and you're supposed to pray with those, because I used to be Catholic too. So it's neat to know how tactical stuff can help you.
It really can.
Yeah, the fidget spinners, the original ones.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that, Camille. Michelle, what did you bring today?
Okay, so about 2 weeks ago, I was going out and I was curling my hair, and I was in a rush. And for the first time, I was using a curling iron that I hadn't used in years. And I burnt my face about an inch wide all the way down my cheek. And actually, Karen, we filmed one time and I just went like this and no one said anything and no one noticed. But I was mortified because I was worried it was going to scar. Anyway, some people told me to use some things which I already had. Worked out perfectly, which was lavender essential oil and frankincense and aloe vera. And within, I think it was 6 days, the whole thing was gone. Like, there's not a mark here anymore. I mean, there's nothing to see, but it was thick all the way down the side of my face and completely gone. So these are among my favorite things. Amazing. And I thankfully just have
natural remedies. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Kim, what did you bring today?
Well, I want to just say that I think my things tie into just about like everything you guys are saying.
Yeah?
And Michelle, I just want to say that's a little bit of law of attraction, because we're actually going through a crisis right now in my family, because last night my daughter was curling her hair with her curling iron and she burnt her eyeball.
Her eyeball?
She turned around, because it was a big giant curling iron that she just started using, and she hit the cord or something and it bounced back and it hit her in her eyeball. So she has like a blister on her eye.
Oh my God.
So everybody be careful with your curling irons. This is the lesson for today.
But will she be okay?
Yeah, it's very small. She said it doesn't hurt, so we're hoping that it'll work itself out. But you know, what are the chances? You know, we just said who hits themselves in the eyeball with a curling iron?
We have a connection.
Exactly.
That's so wild.
And it's also interesting because what I'm going to show and tell also has lavender and frankincense in it, because I wanted to
what? That never happens, right? On Grateful Goddesses.
Synchronicity.
That has never happened. I'm going out to buy some today.
Exactly.
What were you thinking when I said that? I can't even imagine.
I was holding it all in. I was just like, ah! Also ties in with like what Camille was talking about, because these scents and these tactile things can be so grounding, can be also uplifting and intuition enhancing. So I'm super excited about, I have been using at home. I created these aromatherapy blends, and this one has a little crystal in it that I've been using for when I do intuition work, and it has frankincense, lavender, some lemongrass, and trying to figure out what my other secret potion, sage, a little sage in it. So all of those things are good for high vibration stuff. So stuff to use when you're having that little minute before you start working with your intuition or using your cards or whatever you're doing. You can just put your little roller ball on, just like that. And it smells so good. Yeah. And it makes you feel better. When you're going to the dentist's office and you're having that like moment of anxiety, it's just such a calming thing to do. So, and I'm super excited because I'm going to start selling these in my store in next month. So this is my big creative project is creating some of these in botanicals and stuff to help.
Where is your store? Where's your store?
It's coming on my website. It's not up yet. So we'll be launching that at the end of March.
Now you mentioned that there's also a stone in it. So I'm curious, what stone did you put in?
So this is a crystal, and you can put any stone. And by the way, I sell these little things that I'm calling Illumination Boxes, which is, again, this is what's killing me too with you, Camille, because I sell a little pouch with 2 stones in it and an affirmation that I intuitively select for people. And so I love your story of holding the stones, because I really feel like it can be such a grounding experience for people. So you can put any stone in here that feels right to you. Like it's like different people gravitate towards different gemstones, but I like the crystal because it's, for me, that's like aligned with like the high chakra and intuition and all the intuition enhancing stuff. So it really kind of energizes or cures in there with the essential oil.
So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your favorite things today on Grateful Goddesses. And Kim, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you.
Unleashed your inner goddess yet? Thanks for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses. We invite you to visit our website, www.gratefulgoddesses.com, to access today's show notes as well as other helpful resources. Don't forget to leave a review. Until next time, stay strong and empowered to be a grateful goddess.